So this week I want to try and show you the ultimate how to fit coving video. Now it was 2018 since I did a video on this, and then I showed you how to fit coving around pipes. And I've had so many tags on Instagram and social media where I've helped other people, but I wanted to try and clear a few things up for you and me, to be honest, because the way I did use the Wix coving cutting tool on polystyrene, I think I could explain it a bit better. And later I found out I was better with a craft knife, a long snap-off knife. Also, if the cameraman comes this way and does not trip over the coving, I've also got plaster coving to install as well. So hopefully I've got everything for this video. Oh, and this decorative detail that I need to stick back on as well. And I'm not going to be tampering around with any of the existing stuff. I'm going to be trying to make good of what is there. So I want to walk you through doing internal cuts, which I've got a lot to do, and external cuts. Oh, and let's not forget end-to-end mitre joins to avoid obvious butt joins like these. And I'm going to share a little cheat guide for you as well, so you don't get stuck and you can just speed through it. Now this plastic cutting tool you can only buy at Wix. Tell a lie, I found a similar one that you can get at Screwfix. But depending on your coving size, with this particular tool you'll usually need either the 90mm or the 127mm. But I'm also going to be showing you the Wonder Mitre, which is metal and cuts all coving up to 127mm. And I want to compare them. I've only tried this, so I think it'd be good to show you as well and see how I feel with it. Now, when I do all of my cuts, I don't want to just stick the coving up blindly in case the walls aren't square. And that is why I did an offcut of a piece of coving with a cross cut. Doesn't have to be perfect. I will probably not use this again. And this is my template, so I can offer it up and mark where it is positioned at several intervals. Now, as a marker, I do need to try and make sure that this is square in the corner as best I can. So I'm focusing on the outer ends being as flat as possible. Now, instead you might say, Vicky, it's best to mark 83mm, which many manufacturers recommend for 90mm coving. But don't forget, even if you do take time to do that with a scrap piece of paper, you're still going to have discrepancies. And that's why I'm using the offcut rather than this. So I've been all around the room with the template and marked it. Now I'm using a straight edge and I'm drawing a line in line with the majority of the pencil marks. And what you'll notice, if anything is missed, it's usually down to a dip in the ceiling. And I found the perfect example for you. So you can see my pencil line meets the majority of them, apart from this area here. And if you look here, the ceiling's bowing, meaning it was pushing it down. I'm also doing the same for the ceiling marks, so I know where to brush PVA solution to seal the paint so my adhesive sticks better. And it's also important that my pencil lines meet up on the internal and external corners. So I'm now putting a PVA solution between those pencil lines. This should seal the paint and create a better surface for my adhesive to adhere to when I do stick up my coving. I don't have to go everywhere. Really, it's just an inch on the inside of the pencil lines where the adhesive's going to be. I've done. Just want to go around and make sure there's no stupid drips. So now that's all dry, the next job I'm going to do is hammer in some panel pins, some small nails into the skim about a foot apart in line with my pencil line. And these will act as a prop for my coving while the glue goes off. And it'll help me get my cuts ready. I can prop it up and measure for my cuts. Now, it's not strictly vital for polystyrene because it's lightweight, but it definitely is for plaster coving. Now, you might be worried about holes that you create when you come to remove them. Well, don't worry because it's on the line and these holes are just at the bottom of the coving. So when you do come to cork between your coving and your walls, you won't see them. And obviously, don't do it in line with any sockets or light fixtures. Right, the nails are in. Now I want to show you a memorable way on how to use the Coving cutting tool to cut your mitres. Now this Coving tool says sealing in the top, and the Wonder Mite is exactly the same. The pointy end is at the top, and you've got two lugs at the bottom, and that rests underneath it. But I'm going to show you this one because it's easier to hold. Now say you want to keep this piece and you need an internal cut. You always cut on the outside. If I was going for an external cut, I'd cut on the inside of it. But I'm going to leave a reference at the bottom of the screen that you can just screen grab and use that as you go. And exactly the same applies for the Wonder Mitre, which I really want to try first and get a feel for it because it's got a bigger surface area, so I can rest my ultrafine saw against it and hopefully it'll be more accurate. Oh, and because my Coving is symmetrical, I don't have to worry about which is the top and bottom, and that also reduces waste. Nice, hardly needs any sanding. So what I want to do is give my small offcut an internal mitre at each end. That way I can offer it up and use it as a guide while gluing my main pieces to make sure that by the time I've worked my way around the room and the glue's already gone off, I know my mitres will line up, which should help reduce the amount of caulking I need to do on the joins. Now I'm going to compare it with the Wix tool that I used years ago. Oops. Oh, it is harder to use. Takes bloody ages. Definitely don't have patience for this anymore. God, it's not quick. The cut isn't as clean. No, it definitely needs sanding. Well, if it isn't obvious, I'm only going to be using the metal Wonder Mitre from now on. So I'm going to grab my first measurement with a laser measure, but to allow my mitres enough room to meet, I'm knocking off 4mm, about 1/8 of an inch. That's 2mm each side. Now, something that could be better about the Wonder Mitre is that the lugs could be longer to meet my pencil line. So later I will use a rufous square to extend it properly. Also with polystyrene, it's almost impossible to avoid it dinting the Coving. But I'm not too concerned because I can cover it with cork. And if it's too tight, it's so much quicker and easier to saw off a little bit more. So out of the two Coving cutting tools, I definitely prefer the Wonder Mitre because it's so much quicker. I'm not going to catch it accidentally and ruin it with my saw. And this with a Stanley knife is, you know what, I forgot how slow it is. I didn't realise how slow it was compared to this. And I'm not going to use that with a saw because I don't want to accidentally damage it. So I have been using the Wonder Mitre to do a load of cuts to dry fit before I know I'm going to do a load of gluing up. So I'm going to do that now, and I've also noticed I think I've put a bit too many nails in there. It's a bit too rigid. I need to take the odd one out to make sure that my mitres definitely join. That's gappy because I've had to take some nails out there. To fix the Coving, I'm using a solvent-free grab adhesive, which I bought a box of 12 for £19 when I ordered the Coving itself. Solvent-based adhesives aren't recommended as they can actually damage or dissolve the polystyrene. And it roughly took me an hour to set, which gave me plenty of time to make adjustments as I went. Now, I'm not sure how strong it really is, but I knew it would be fine for lightweight Coving. Got it on the ceiling. And if you're wondering about that hissing sound in the background, that's just my fan and aircon running. We were in the middle of a heat wave, and trust me, ceiling work gets sweaty fast. Once I stuck it up, I pressed the Coving on for good contact, wiped away the excess as I went. So this is why I wanted an offcut, because I can offer it up and double check everything's going to be right. And if not, I need to do some adjustments. So that looks good to me. Very slight fill to do there. I think that's okay. Right, I'm going to put a nail in there again. Just a couple of pins, just stop anything from dropping down. But someone told me years ago, don't worry about the ceiling line, whether it matches that or not. Worry about the bottom, because this can be filled easily with cork. You won't see anything. So that reminded me, while I'm here, I'm filling the gaps with adhesive. I've moved back to the applicator because I need to use this for better control when I do fill in any gaps. I'd say a tube is done about 4 meters. and I do need to put a bit of glue on the joins. Hopefully that's enough. Now, if you remember, I said I did some cuts and some dry fits. Well, my coving isn't long enough to go all the way to the end and do an external mitre. So instead of doing a butt join, I have done a mitre at the end, and I'll have to do an external mitre on the next piece to continue it. Some people do butt joins. Come back, please. So I'm getting that in the corner. This glue, you can see I've got a little bit to fill. And I'll put some adhesive in a minute just to get it to blend in. I've just got to make sure this is all pushed on. I had to fill it a bit more here because I've used 2 different mitre cutting tools, which oddly I found you couldn't mix and match. So before I show you how I'm going to continue around the external corner, I may as well do this side because it's exactly the same scenario as what I've just done there. And before the adhesive sets on this one, I can make sure that my mitres are absolutely bang on here. Your walls just might not be square. Now the coving I've picked comes in 3 metre lengths, and it wasn't long enough to give me an external mitre cut here. It stopped just about there, so I couldn't have even put an external mitre on it, so I had to cut it earlier. I've done an internal mitre cut, so if you look here, now I need to do an external mitre cut. But luckily, I always keep my offcuts, and if I turn this around, it's an offcut that actually matches, and it's long enough, so I don't even have to make this cut again. So just to show you, you offer that up, it's going to create that join there. I hope that makes sense. What I need to do now is offer that up, mark here where to do my external cut. And I don't want to cut this too much either because this is perfect. I'm just going to draw a little line there because I know that's the way I need it to go outwards. Now, something I've got to worry about is if I cut this wrong, I've lost my surface area to position the lugs over. Let's have a look. Please fit. Hopefully my wall's not out. And I did one earlier as well. Although note, I focused far too much here using offcuts, and this really should have been a full length. So I'm blaming this mistake on the very hot weather. Something's definitely out there on that corner. This is bad. Checking with my angle finder. It's out by about a degree. Now, because I weren't joining, I've had to get rid of the nails on this corner to manipulate them, and now they join. But they're a bit tricky to get together without any glue. So now I'm going to glue up and put some nails in to keep them in place. Now I'm getting it to meet. So I've got to do another external mitre, which I'll be keeping this side and cutting on the inside. Annoyingly, you will have to lose a little bit just because the lugs need to rest on something. So when you do order some, always account for at least 10% wastage and mistakes. Oh, and another tip is to not have joins above wall lines, just in case your joins aren't perfect. Now I'm going to show you this external mitre because it was so much better than the other one. I think this is more square than that. I think that was about a degree. That is like a dream. As you can probably tell, it's a bit dark in here, so I've turned off my studio light just for you so you don't get strobing. But I am on my last piece, and I've had to make this slightly shy just to slot it in, but I've also had to take the nails out because I couldn't get it up and over, and also I've met at this point as quickly as I could because this glue hasn't completely set, it's nearly gone off, but there's a slight bit of movement if I need to just quickly adjust, but I know I'm going to have to fill that with cork. So I've glued the joins already, and now I'm going to slot it on, and I'll put my nails back on shortly. The other thing I don't know if I've said is when you are doing a cut like this, you've got an external and an internal, do your externals first and then you can cut down the internal. It's much easier because you can cut on the outside of that tool. Once you cut off the external mitre, there's no room to offer up your cutting tool. You've completely lost it unless you temporarily try to join another offcut together so you can rest those lugs on. Now this external to an internal mitre was the only one that I was struggling with just to get them in line because the external one was sticking out a little bit. So if you look closer, I've just slotted some veneer pins inside to jab into the other one to stop it from moving. So I'll take those out once all of the glue is dried. Or if you're worried about the glue not setting, you could push them in fully if they're short enough. Now I can leave it and then start working on the next room. After the glue's set, first I pull out all of the nails so Mr. TCD can paint the hallway's coving while I work on the office. So we're back in the office and you might be wondering why I just stopped the coving there and I could have just continued on this wall. Well, originally I wanted to do that and I wanted to do a stop end return piece there, which I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But my husband and family came round and said, no, just go with cross cuts. But if you are in this situation and you want to add another piece of coving after it's been installed, which I could do later, is what I've done is just to show you is I've got a mitre, an internal mitre piece here, but I've actually shaved the back of it. So basically this is a little bit like, or almost the same as my skirting board video where I scribed my internal mitres when your rooms are very unlikely square. And it's so easy with polystyrene and a Stanley knife. But I've got two examples here. It's definitely a good idea to practice on offcuts. So this was my first attempt. And I back cut the bottom by mistake. Obviously that would need filling and I don't want that at all. And I'd done too much here. So I did it again. I had a straight cut there and it's a little bit shy there, but that really doesn't matter. So all of that is nice and easy to fill and I can continue to the end. Now if I did that, by the time I got to the end, this is what I wanted to do. But you might actually have to do this in your house with architrave in the way, or maybe your ceiling stops here and then you've got a conversion that goes towards the top. So I would have had to end with an external mitre here, and I probably would have stopped it in line with my tiles. And then you just need another external mitre and do a cross cut where you can join them there and stick it on the wall. And that is what it would have looked like. Now where you make that cross cut, you just need to make sure that this is the same thickness as that. This is a little bit out because I've just found this offcut. Now this might be obvious, but I have seen people question this on the internet. You can't just leave it like that without adding a piece because you can see a gaping hole from the other side. I laughed when I saw that comment, but I suppose if you've never done coving before, you don't know. In fact, what I would like to know is, do you think I should have gone with that or just kept it as it is? So while Mr. TCD paints all the polystyrene coving, I now need to work on the plaster stuff. So I've got it down here. I'm going to cut it exactly the same with the Wonder Mitre, but this time what I've done is kept the writing at the back at the top. So that's a ceiling point, just in case there is a top and bottom to this. There's no top and bottom arrows on it, but there may be on your coving, or you've got a decorative detail that's only at the top. So I've only got one chance with this. I've only got one long piece to fit over there, have a mitre in the corner, and also that bit. Now, ideally, I would have liked to take this off and only had one butt join, but I might end up opening a can of worms there. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit and do my best. If I absolutely hate it, which, you know, life goes on, I probably will just leave it. I'll change it if I really feel like I have to. And also, don't be fooled by the plain concave detail. When I've offered it up, it definitely isn't the same size. That might be due to this flat end here, which this doesn't have. To try and achieve the best butt join fit, I'm scraping any protrusions off the existing coving with a Stanley knife, and you might see it is also a slopey cut, so I had to cut my new piece on a slight angle. And after cutting my next length, I do a dry fit to see if I've created a good enough clearance to fit them together and they're not too tight. I'm definitely going to have to fill this a lot. I think that's going to be all right. I can adjust that to the right height because it's slightly wonky there, and I can cover it with one of those things. Yeah, I don't think I can get any better than that. Right, that's what we're going for. And I've got this little piece ready for up there as well, but I've had to put nails there because I really need to make sure that when I put it up, it's bang in line with that, because if you look here, it's dropped a little bit and it looks shy there as well. I think that's because there's so much adhesive at the back of here. Anyway, I'm just gonna have to make do there and do my best. I'm applying the plaster coving with drywall adhesive. I'm not taking a chance with the solvent-free grab adhesive. So what I've done is just got a 1 kilogram batch to mix with water in my bucket. I've got a little paddle. Oh, and some palette knives. Now, I always confuse the internet with this. This drywall adhesive is pink, it's not plaster. I often get called a silly cow on Facebook thinking I've got it mixed up. Now, because it's quite sloppy at the minute, and hopefully in about 10 minutes it'll get thicker, that is actually a bit of a concern for this one here, because I do need to add quite a lot of adhesive to the back of the tiny thing to build it off the wall, because the coving, the original coving, does stick out by probably about 8 mil there. So I think I'm gonna add this piece on and get that fine-tuned, hopefully. Basically, I think the long piece is gonna be much easier than trying to match the existing coving, trying to get it bang on in line. First thing I'm going to do is just put some adhesive at the end. Also, because I want it to be seamless, I've tried to back cut the end of it with a Stanley knife, and exactly the same with this. It's a little bit tapered. Just going to add some, hopefully it'll be easy to build up. It's definitely going to be sloppier than the grab adhesive. Right. So I don't want to push it too much. Now it looks like it needs so much more. I'm going to have to take it off. Yeah, I'd rather have it spilling out like that, and I could do with the nail in the top. So I've feathered it in as best I could with a palette knife and just going over it with a wet rag to smooth it out. Now I'm going to add that tiny piece there and then focus on the long one. It's definitely sticking. Oh, my nail's gone. I think that can come off now. I've got to cut it down really quickly. I'd already checked this as well. No! There goes my nails. Thankfully, Mr. TCD could offer support because I did need it in the end. First of all, nail, because it's sloping down here. To clean up, I used a mix of palette knives, scraping off excess adhesive, then swapped to a damp rag and a clean wet brush, and quite a lot of panic. Next time, I'm definitely painting the walls after I've finished installing coving. So I've left that for 24 hours, then keyed any gritty adhesive residue with sandpaper, and now I'm brushing PVA over it again to kill the suction. and over a larger area in case I want to feather on the adhesive, especially over that butt joint, then left it to dry for about an hour. Now, my internal detail piece that I'm going to stick on wasn't a perfect fit because I had a large gap on the coving, but I could only work with what I had. So I'm applying drywall adhesive liberally, trying to pack in as much as I could, and even with a test fit, I found I hadn't applied enough. And this started to feel like a piece of art, and I'm sculpting on the adhesive around it with a filling knife, my finger, a wet paintbrush, anything I could do to get it right. And because the original coving wasn't flat to the wall, I had that 8mm gap, which then also transferred to the bottom of the detail. So I'm cramming it in there too, but anything that I miss will be corked. So now I'm left to do the painting. I've done 2 mist coats on this, and I'm going to leave that to dry and then do my proper coat. But it's probably obvious with the streaks on the wall, do your coving first and then paint. And what I would do is paint the coving first, so any drips that go onto the wall, you can cover up with your actual colour. So yeah, painting is not my favourite job, and I've still got to do a few fills and touch-ups in here as well. But I'm particularly happy with how my scarf joints have turned out. You can see I've got to paint under here as well because you can see where my nails were. And by the time I've painted the bottom, I've got to then touch up the walls. Also, I wanted to point out, I'm very happy that my accident wasn't that noticeable. The scarf joint above the lighting, you might see a very faint line. It's very hard to tell, but I think we need to go over it with one more coat and maybe a fill. But really now, it's just boring touch-ups. But something I'm going to answer, because I know I'm going to get this question a lot, is why did I not use a mitre box for all of the mitred corners? Well, we have used a mitre saw before, our very first coving DIY, which I didn't show on video. In fact, I never even filmed any of my projects at that point. And all the corners, all the mitres were so gappy because we'd got it wrong. And that's why, if you have a look, you can't just put your coving in a mitre box and just hope and pray that your mitre is going to work, because it's all about the way it's angled. So what you will find on the market is special mitre boxes with clamps to push it. So if you look here, I'd probably have to cut this while I've got this gap here, but I'd have to measure it to double check that's right. It can be done, but I much prefer the Wonder Mitre. There's just less guessing in it. Anyway, I hope this video has been very useful, because this is the kind of video that I really needed when I started out, with all of the solutions in one. And don't forget coving around the pipes that I showed you years ago, which is not in this because there's no wet central heating. Anyway, I'm going to get back to painting, and hopefully I'll see you in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.